psilocybin,
Yes.
MDMA,
Yes.
and ketamine.
Yeah, that's what's been legalised in Australia. For you to be eligible, you have to be treatment resistant for depression or PTSD. So what that means is you've tried therapy, you've tried medications, and you're still feeling stuck. There's an intrinsic wisdom to the medicine. We might not always get the experience that we want, but we'll get the experience that we need.
You have a number of sessions leading up to it, then you have your session, and then you have a number of sessions afterwards.
Then integration. Music is often seen as being the third therapist in the room. The playlists are very intentionally curated to have like an arc. So you're going to have the build up, you're going to have the peak moments and experiences, and then the come down, and that can all be part of what gives that journey structure. I think one of the most common themes that people sort of come out of these experiences with is a connection to themselves and coming from their heart, and a connection to nature.
Welcome everybody to the Reconnect to Self podcast, the show that aims to help you rediscover what ultimately brings you joy. And this week we have a sponsor, and that sponsor is us. The show is brought to you by Reconnect Retreats. We have a bunch of retreats this year. We have both relationship retreats run by Tracey and the amazing Tina, who we hope to have on the show at some point. And our individual retreats, which is run by the amazing Tracey and me. So check them out. We definitely have an individual retreat in May. There's a relationship retreat in June. Mm-hmm. And then we have
registrations are open for both of those now?
Yes, absolutely. And you can do that on our website, which is traceyquayle.com. So check that out. Now, today's episode is, I haven't figured out what we're going to call it, but it's all about psychedelics.
Yes.
And the reason being is because you're extremely passionate about that.
Very passionate.
Why?
I love them. No, I think the reason why I'm so passionate about them is early in my journey, in my spiritual journey, I was listening to podcasts like people might have remembered from other episodes. And the ones that I was really curious about and drawn to were the ones around plant medicine. I just would sort of cherry pick my way through people's podcast lists, and those were the episodes that really jumped out at me that I wanted to learn about. And yeah, I just had this really, really massive curiosity and thirst for knowledge around psychedelics and plant medicine.
So you hear this word a lot, plant medicine. What is plant medicine?
So it's things that are kind of naturally occurring, so grown in nature, and they can have mind-altering effects. So
I'm gonna guess ayahuasca, magic mushrooms, which is called psilocybin.
Yes.
Cannabis.
Yes.
I don't know about MDMA. I don't know how that's made.
They're classified as a psychedelic, but I'm not sure in terms of plant medicine if it would fall into that. There's lots of other ones that they're doing over in South America and things.
Your main focus, though, and we'll get onto the course that you did, is sort of psilocybin, MDMA, and ketamine.
That's what's been legalised in Australia.
Yeah, which is why we're talking about it. Is
yeah,
amazingly. And I can believe it. Australia, leading the world?
We are leading the world, yeah.
Wow.
Incredible.
Go Aussie.
I'm very proud of us for that.
Yes.
Yeah, they're doing loads of trials and things over in America, but they just haven't been able to get them across the line just yet. But we were world leaders in that.
Now, a lot of people are scared about this sort of thing because I guess we won't go into it too much, but it's the sort of... propaganda is a strong word, but... It was.
It was actually part of my course to learn about the history of the psychedelics and psychedelic movement and when they were sort of outlawed and why and how that came about. And at that point, they'd already done loads of trials. They'd done, they had loads of information about how helpful these medicines were and how they were supporting people. But due to the war on drugs and the anti-war movement and all these things that were kind of around those times in the 60s.
Well, I think it was
50s and
60s, 70s, 80s, because Reagan was 80s.
Well, they kept it going, but I think it started around the Vietnam War was when they started
get rid of the hippies and all
yeah,
that sort of
yeah,
thing.
the free love and the peace love and all that stuff. And,
Yep.
Yeah.
Jeez, okay.
So I'd been learning, a couple of years ago around my podcasts, kind of what people's experiences were, their personal experiences, how that changed them afterwards, how they saw the world differently. And then I started noticing when I was listening to podcasts kind of about wellness, or where there's doctors on there, or just people that have got a very Western education, they seem to be more open to Eastern medicines and alternative medicines and therapies and things, if they'd had some sort of psychedelic or plant medicine experience. I really saw the correlation between, they're really quite open-minded. And then somewhere in the story I'll hear they've gone and done something, and I'm like, right, they just seem to think outside the box when they've had this different kind of experience. So it really intrigued me.
So that would have been around the time that you, what's the word? You came up with the idea that we would do it together.
Oh, yeah. When I was learning all these things, I was like, how do I get a hold of this?
Yeah.
So we've done a couple of journeys.
Yep.
And do you want to talk about the very first one that we did that was really quite profound for both of us? Yep. So we had found a spot in nature, so that we were really, immersed in
An Airbnb.
An Airbnb was beautiful nature. And we were so even though I hadn't done the training at this point, I did know enough to know that it is important where you do something and your mindset around that. So they call that set and setting. So mindset is important, and how you're going into that journey, and who you're around, and your environment and things. Setting is your environment, sorry.
We should say where it is. It was Chittering.
It was in Chittering, yeah.
Which is where we run our retreats.
We didn't do that on our retreat, but no.
No.
Yeah.
No, but the environment of Chittering
it's
in
very
in the winter
serene
is
and beautiful, and So with a journey, it's really important again that you are feeling really comfortable before going into that, and you haven't eaten too much before having a journey, because it can lead to feeling quite nauseous and.
The nausea. So we should mention this was psilocybin, which is mushrooms.
Yeah.
That first time we've done it a few times now, but that first time the nausea was pretty strong.
We actually wonder though, and this is just. We're just wondering, we don't know if this is actually true or not, but we'd had a spa.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so maybe that changed our body temperature in a certain way or something. So we both felt quite nauseous after we got out of the spa.
Going, oh my God.
That might have been a mistake, yeah.
And that can be a tricky one, because that's where people will get scared.
Yes, and so I will sort of jump in, in terms of my training and what I've learned, throughout that training. We often describe to clients that it can be like when you're taking off in an aeroplane, that turbulence at the very beginning where things are bumpy and rocky and things like that, that can be like that at the start of the psilocybin journey, where you're feeling a bit nauseous, you're feeling a bit uncomfortable in your own skin, maybe a little bit headachy. If you're not knowing that that's quite common and quite normal, that could freak you out and think, oh my God, what have I signed myself up for? And am I going to have 6 hours of this? And you could really freak yourself out and bring yourself into a state that wouldn't be so pleasant.
Yes. But that settled down after maybe half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, something like that. And
I felt really tired as well. I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, is this going to be... I remember thinking that. Is this going to be my night? That I just feel nauseous and tired? And,
we should backtrack and talk about setting intentions and all the stuff that we did before we... Because we drank it as tea before we did that.
So we each individually sort of sat quietly, and I think did we do a breathwork before or after that? Maybe after that.
After.
Yeah. But in the intention setting, we just sort of got clear with ourselves about what we would like that journey to be like. We kind of called in protection and asked to be sort of guided through that journey and protected by our guides or spirits or, whatever, whether you believe in that or not, we did.
Yep.
So we really set intentions around what we hoped to get out of that experience, but we were still kind of open to what the medicine was going to show us, because there's an intrinsic wisdom to the medicine, as well as our own bodies have wisdom. So we might not always get the experience that we want, but we'll get the experience that we need.
Yeah. So at this point, I might say, I'm a DJ. I've done a myriad of drugs in my 20s, but had never done mushrooms ever.
Neither had I, yeah.
Almost everything else. And I enjoyed most of those experiences. This one, I would have to say, is the best experience I've ever had.
Why do you think that is?
I think, because I definitely had the fear. Like go back to episode 2 around my anxiety journey, right? So my mind can be very creative. I have the ability to catastrophize things pretty easily, and my mind can take me to some scary places. And so, never having done mushrooms before, I was definitely had some trepidation around where is my mind going to take me on this journey?
Yeah.
And is it going to be bad? Mm-hmm. And after the nausea passed, I really found it to be quite profound. I found that I could turn it on and off, so I could lean in and have the visuals and really immerse myself in that experience. But if I wanted to just chill out for a little bit, I could open my eyes and feel relatively normal.
Do you want to explain to people what you mean by visuals?
Like kind of we were in nature, so I had the ability to make the trees do whatever I wanted them to do in terms of movement. Mm-hmm. So I could make the trees dance or whatever, and none of that was scary. I wanted them to do it. I wanted to see them move, and I wanted them to do this and that. And I know people have all sorts, like a lot of people talk about kaleidoscopes and that kind of kaleidoscope view of things, or the Matrix.
I got that. I got both of those.
Yeah. But for me, it was more, excuse me, just getting the trees to move how I wanted them to move, and it was really quite magical. I felt very connected to nature. I felt very wise, I think. I remember towards the end of the evening, I thought I was some sort of prophet, where I just thought I had the keys to unlock the secrets of
the universe,
or just being a good human, getting through this journey of life that has a lot of challenges. I felt very, just really comfortable in my own skin. It was a magical feeling, and profound is probably the best word I could use. Yeah,
they often describe in the trainings that it's ineffable, it's indescribable.
Yes,
you just really can't give it the words and the description to articulate it.
So that's coming from someone in me who was extremely fearful. I was very nervous that day of doing it. And I understand why people are nervous. I think I've explained why that is.
And even I know that after my nausea passed on that experience, I remember wanting to cry but not feeling upset. Like it was a release. I
cried my eyes out. Remember?
I know you did. I was first. I remember being first, that I just cried, and I knew that it was a release. I knew that this is just emptying out this energy that's inside of me that's not helpful. So I was crying, and you were really sweet, and you came over to me, and I think you were trying to comfort me. But as soon as I said to you, I'm not crying because I'm upset, it's just a release, it all sort of turned off.
Yeah.
And so that gave me a really good indication that this is why we should stay in our own journeys. Because me trying to communicate with you impacted my journey, but I was trying to reassure you that I was fine.
We should say, what we're describing is not a therapeutic session.
No, this is just what people have done, commonly for years and years and years. This is not considered a course of treatment.
Yeah. So we'll get onto that. But I thought we could set the scene in terms of, explaining our very first experience with it. The part where I should explain why I cried my eyes out is I had this thing about listening to classical music, and I was listening to this one particular piece which I love. I think it was Canon, in D, canon in D major, something like that. Just a beautiful, beautiful piece of music, and I was so moved by this music that I started crying, and then I started thinking about you and our journey in life together.
Yeah, and then you got me to cry. You
Yeah.
turned around to me and said, "It's been a pleasure doing life with you." And I'm
Yeah,
like, that's
because
a real trigger for me to
I
get
also
some
had
crying.
decided that I wanted this music played at my funeral.
Yeah, so you told me in the journey about that. So you set me off.
Yeah, yeah. And it didn't, you know...
It wasn't bad. It wasn't
Yeah,
bad.
no,
It was
actually,
beautiful.
It was beautiful. It was
yeah,
really...
very connecting.
Yeah, I felt an overwhelming amount of love
Yes.
towards you.
Yeah. And that's what it does. It brings people into their heart. I think one of the most common themes that people sort of come out of these experiences with is a connection to themselves and coming from their heart, and a connection to nature.
Yeah.
And to everything.
Yeah, I think our setting played a big part.
And that's why they say, it's got to be really...
It was a really
for that.
beautiful place to be.
Yeah.
Where should we go from here?
So that was just our own, personal experiences where I'm knowing, okay, this is quite profound. This can, actually, what I should say is, again, it's not about just going and having that lovely one-off experience. It really is about integration. So I will go through kind of what the course taught me. But one of the things I think we did really well after our experience is we would intentionally seek out nature and do things in nature a lot more, I think.
Yeah, so to set the scene, we arrived at the Airbnb at maybe 3 p.m, and we did it that first sort of afternoon, evening, and then we were there for another 2 days.
Yeah. Just to give us a chance to really process our experience and really, think about what we want to come from those things. Because again, when you're feeling so connected to nature, it's nice in that moment, but how are you going to carry that through? How is that going to change your life moving forward? Because that's what the whole purpose of it is. It's not supposed to just be this party drug that we go out and have a nice night, although people can do that. Yep. It's why are we doing this and what's going to change from here?
Yeah. Well, should we talk a little bit about who it's therapeutically... who it's for?
Mm-hmm.
And
so for you to be eligible within Australia, you have to be treatment resistant for depression or PTSD. So what that means is you've tried therapy, you've tried medications, and you're still feeling stuck. Yeah. And then the psychiatrist might deem you appropriate. They do a thorough screening because there's some psychiatric and physical conditions that would rule you out from this kind of therapy. But for those that are deemed, healthy and appropriate, what they would then do is they would be assigned or connected with 2 therapists. So in psychedelic-assisted therapy, we have 2 therapists with every person, and they do what we call preparation sessions. So they might have 2 or 3 or as many as that person needs sessions prior to the dosing day to get really, really comfortable with, what might happen on the day, what they intend to get out of this experience, what might happen if they don't get those, intentions met.
Yeah.
You're looking at ways to support them throughout their journey. That might involve touch. You're making sure that you're getting consent for all of these things and explaining to the client that, they can withdraw that consent for touch at any time. So really getting them really comfortable and feeling supported by the 2 therapists. And you're talking through kind of what that day would look like. You're going to talk about music. Music, you were saying about how powerful it was for you playing that piece of music, but yes. Music is often seen as being the third therapist in the room. And the playlists are very intentionally curated to have like an arc to the journey. So you're going to have the build up, you're going to have the peak moments and experiences, and then the come down, and that can all be part of, what gives that journey structure.
Mm. So it's very different from, we talked about you would say ours was a social kind of experience that you and I had together. Is that
more so? But I think that we were still very intentional about all of it, like in terms of our set. No, we made sure our set and our setting was all correct, and we made sure that it wasn't just a one-off experience. We were integrating those learnings and insights.
Whereas the psychedelic-assisted therapy is very much, you have a number of sessions leading up to it, then you have your session, and then you have a number of sessions afterwards.
That are integration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now's probably a good time to mention that movie Dosed.
Yes.
Because I think that kind of does an amazing job of explaining and showing how this all works. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah. So we had watched this movie called Dosed, and it was around a lady that was very fearful around dying. So she was diagnosed with cancer, and I think she had 6 months that they'd given her to live. It was quite soon. And she had 4 kids. She was only in her early 50s, and she'd been with her childhood sweetheart, her whole life, and had a very good relationship. So she was very worried about leaving her family and dying. So she did a course of treatments, and she found it really, really profound. And after she completed that journey, she was more self-loving. She started putting herself first a little bit more. I think she'd be a bit of a people pleaser, she identified. And so through that journey, she realised that she was really important as well, and she started prioritising herself and making time for herself and putting boundaries in place.
The big thing was her fear was more what is going to happen to them.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much a fear of dying, if that's correct. It was the fear of, is her family going to be okay?
Yeah, and that's why she didn't want to die.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she did psilocybin.
Yes.
And through that journey, whether she had I can't remember if she had a vision, but she just instinctively knew that her family were going to be okay.
Yeah, she's had a sense of peace, didn't she?
Yeah, so that anxiety completely went away.
Yeah.
And that's probably the other thing. We'll come back to the movie. Maybe get a little bit political here. One of the theories around the other reason why all of these medications have been prohibited for so long is because of big pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
Because and again, I don't know the studies, so this is just me talking, it's not backed up by a lot. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong. But there's many examples of people doing one dose and curing whatever issue they were trying to cure. So in this instance, it was her trying to get over that anxiety of, will her family be okay?
Yeah.
One session, she was done.
Yeah.
The reason big pharmaceutical companies don't like that is because they would much rather give you a prescription that you pay for every month.
Yep, you're locked into.
You're locked into it, and you just keep going and going, and they keep making more and more profits.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doing a one dose and fixed is not a profitable business model.
No, it's not. And really, you're right. It is like 1 or 2 or 3 treatments. It's really not an ongoing course of treatment. It's very effective, the trials that they've done. And they also have proven that they're not addictive. Like, people always have those worries around, oh, yeah, you're going to do it all the time. But if you think back to the movie, the lady was like, I'm not rushing back to do that. Like, it's so intense.
Yes.
It's not something you're like, yeah, sign me up for next weekend.
Yep. Yep.
You're really doing some work.
Yes.
With that. And so I think in that movie, again, she waited a few years, and then she went back for a different reason. But it was a few years in between.
Yeah, so she lived well beyond the expectation. I think she's still alive now to ruin the ending, but I still recommend you watch it. You can look it up on it. You have to buy it. It's not
on a streaming service.
Yeah, it's not on a streamer, but you just make a donation. I think the minimum donation is $10, and you can download the movie.
But I just want to say, people get these profound insights, and so that's why, again, you don't need to keep doing, these sessions over and over. You want the insights, you want the learnings that you've gotten, from that dosing day, and that's what you integrate. So, whether it's like for her, it was looking after herself more, it was going into nature more. Like, she was really clear around the things that changed for her after having that experience. And I think for us as well, like, we really get a lot out of being in nature, and
I think you've talked about this before, where we don't go to Crown or a hotel in the city anymore. Like, that's just...
Yeah, I want my feet on the ground. Or the ability to have my feet on the ground, or open a window, or...
Yeah, see trees, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's important for us now.
I think I was going to say that she getting over that anxiety, and again, I say some of this stuff, and I know it might sound crazy, but I know you agree with me. There's a lot of... things around disease that, is very hard for doctors to identify, like anxiety and mindset, and all of these things can contribute. And what you see in this example in this film is that her anxieties went away, her mindset totally changed, and lo and behold, she lives well beyond what the doctors were telling her.
Yeah.
Then what was the second? She did a second psilocybin journey.
She was trying to make a decision about having a major surgery.
Ah, that's right.
That was going to really impact her. And in fact, one of the reasons why she didn't want the surgery, not only was it huge and it was going to be a big recovery, but she thought it might impact her ability to go for walks because she was going to be left with a limp.
Yeah.
And because she was getting so much joy out of being in nature, she had to really weigh that up. Am I willing to risk not being able to do that anymore?
Yeah.
And so she did another journey.
Yeah. And she decided not to get the surgery.
Yeah, she didn't get the surgery. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the other thing that she did, which is just mind-blowing?
Well, it's kind of going into a whole different path, so I'm not sure.
It's
you can say
still
it, yeah,
relevant.
Of course, it's plant medicine.
So I don't know the time frames, but I think it was years.
Yeah, it was about 4.5 years, I think, this whole...
So, going back, she was told she had 6 months, and now it's like 4 years later or whatever. Something did come back.
No, a new thing.
It was a new, but it was a form of cancer.
Yeah, breast cancer.
And again, this has nothing to do with psychedelic-assisted therapies. It was so interesting is she went on this protocol of cannabis oil and was taking 100 or 1,000 times the, I guess, normal...
The dose that she was currently on, because she was already on it for sleeping, wasn't she?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and then she had to increase it by 100 times.
Yeah, and to the point where she was almost kind of comatose.
Yeah, during the day.
So she would sleep 18 hours.
I think she said 18 hours a day.
18 hours a day, and then the 6 or so hours that she's awake, she's not doing much.
She said she was a drooling mess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And she did that for a decent number of weeks/months.
Yeah.
And...
Well, then she changed the daytime doses to CBD oil, not THC.
Yeah, so she wasn't munted.
Yeah, so she could function a bit better, and then she felt a bit better in the day.
But what ended up happening is, again, I'm not sure if she was fully cured, but...
It reduced the masses. It showed the masses.
Showed this huge improvement. Yeah. And I guess the theory was that she stripped everything out of her life, slept and slept and slept.
And healed and recovered.
Healed herself.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not promoting any of this, but it was fascinating to watch it.
And it's also to show people there's stuff out there.
Yeah.
And again, that's why when I was listening to those podcasts in the very beginning, where I'm hearing these doctors open to different, courses of treatments or different modalities. And I always like those ones because they're the ones I can show people, hey, the science is there. Like, we've got a person here with all that training and they're still saying this. Whereas if I was just showing someone, a naturopath or someone that's, not had the more Western type of education, people would dismiss me. Yeah. Whereas I like it when I can show them both.
Yeah. And that was a thing for you, I think, for a while, where you didn't ever want to talk about anything that you've done or experimented with because you didn't want to be judged by people.
People can be worried about judgment, and definitely for me, I would think that. And I mean, nowadays I'm not so closed with that because I think it's important that people know that I'm experienced in that, because I think that while that's not a factor in terms of, couldn't not qualify if I haven't done this experience myself, I do think it gives you insights that would be tricky to gain without that personal experience. Like exactly what we talked about before with me explaining to you that I was crying because of a certain reason, that pulled me out of my experience. So now I know you really don't interfere with anybody that's on a psychedelic unless they're seeking you out for some support. You don't want to be just bothering them for your own curiosity.
Well, let's delve a little bit into what someone can expect if you have PTSD and, nothing seems to be helping. I keep getting this term wrong. What's the depression one? Treatment resistant?
Yes.
Treatment resistant depression.
Yeah.
So you've done this course. Mm-hmm. It was a very intense course, very expensive course. Do we want to talk?
It was an expensive course.
Do you want to say how much it was?
Might have been $10,000 plus flights, plus a little bit of accommodation around the course.
So you've
invested a lot.
You've invested in yourself.
Yes.
That's for sure. And we should say that it's a non-for-profit.
Yeah,
so
originally, to be honest, I was thinking someone is making a killing here, like with this. Because there was also, it's an online course apart from when you go to do your in-person part of the training. And there was 88 people. And I remember thinking, that's a big chunk of money that they're getting in. But once I started the course and, I started seeing who the presenters were that were doing our doing our lectures and things, these are world leaders in psychedelics. I mean, again, I've listened to lots of podcasts, so I know who the world leaders are and who's doing the research and who's doing the trials and things like that. And even for a lot of people that have heard of the book called The Body Keeps the Score, that's a very famous book and a very famous author. He was one of our presenters.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty impressive. I was like, holy moly, this guy's been around forever and he's very bit of a guru in this space. So we had some really world-class facilitators and people that are already doing the trials and working in this space. So, you know, being able to hear their stories and their examples and things, and, you know, what some of their clients' challenging experiences might have been and how they worked with them, you know, that kind of stuff was really interesting.
Yeah. What were some of the key takeaways from doing the whole thing? Like, what did you...
I think just knowing that, it's really important that people are screened. I think I probably was a bit naive thinking, it would help everybody and it would be, but really I realise now that, no, I think I'm very glad that's not my responsibility. That's a psychiatrist's responsibility to screen someone from, you know, physical and psychiatric conditions to make sure it's safe for them. So that's a definite key takeaway. And also probably the integration, like really making sure that someone's really taken those insights and that experience, and they're making sure that that's making changes in their life moving forward. Like, again, not just having that lovely experience and going, wow, that was cool, I saw some visuals and I saw the trees dance and
like me,
whatever, but instead it's going, right, I'm really realizing I need to connect to nature, I need to move my body more, I need to come from my heart, I need to be more loving and compassionate. Those are some of the things that you can, you know, have insight with. And people's experience as well can just be so varied of what they might have. Like, people can have very mystical experiences. People can say that they have loved ones come through, or they have, you know, just a feeling of connectedness to everything. So there can be a big range of experiences, but some of the challenges could be what they call an ego death. And what that means is everything you kind of know about yourself, you know, when you're in that experience, it kind of just falls away, and all those things that you identify yourself around aren't really there and aren't really important to you. And so coming out of that experience, it can be a little bit hard to sort of get your head around, who am I and who do I want to be? And
that sounds terrible though, but that's not a bad thing, is it?
It's not a bad thing because, you know, people are having to figure out what they want life to look like and how they want to be. So part of the reason why psychedelics can be so helpful is it breaks people out of their rigid way of thinking. So I always bang on about that first 7 years and, you know, how rigid we get, you know, by the time we're 35, that we're thinking the same thoughts, we're doing the same behaviours, we're really locked into those patterns. So what it does is it opens up all that brain connectivity back up, and it puts you in a I can never say this, neuroplasticity like state. Actually, this is one of my favourite little things. Can you put that towards the camera so if anyone sees it?
I might just show it on screen, but just describe what it is.
So it shows two brains. So one's under a placebo, which is still more lit up than what a normal brain would look like. But the one that's on psilocybin, the brain connectivity, it's like a ball of wool if you looked at it with all the different strands.
Basically, it's showing the brain normally and the number of
brain connections,
neurons firing kind of thing, right? And you would describe that as not that well lit up.
No, there's only a few lines really.
And then the one on psilocybin is the other image, which shows like everything is lit up, like you're firing all of these new pathways, that all
these options and all these possibilities.
It's almost like if you've seen that movie Limitless. The famous actor, I can't remember, a very handsome man. He was in that movie with Lady Gaga when he was the country singer. This is going to annoy everyone if I don't nail this name.
You're going to have to think of that. But it opens up that brain connectivity, and that's why people are thinking differently. They're not locked into the way that they previously have thought, and all those patterns that have kept them locked into that. It opens everything up, and your brain is in that plasticky state, you know, for a couple of days afterwards. That's why they try and make sure that we have the integration session the very next day after a dosing session, so that you can really debrief the person and unpack what their experience was like. But you're not putting your interpretations on it. You're getting them to have their insights and see what they make of things. And in fact, you know, one of the things that I really realised through this course of, learning was that I can often interpret things very, very differently than my clients. And so just to really make sure I give people enough space that they come to their own conclusions. Like, it's more important that they have their own discoveries rather than me having that insight and making those links.
I reckon there was two big things that you came back from Sydney with. So that's one, which is you basically said something like, you're not going to provide all the answers, or you're not going to speak as much, or something like that.
I want them to have their own insights. And I think doing this course really, really helped me understand that, their wisdom. I always say to people, you're your own best expert, you know yourself best. I always give them those sort of statements and things, and I believe that. But I just want to provide more space for them to come up with those insights rather than me going, oh, did you see the link there?
And the second thing was the breath work.
Oh, yeah. So
why don't we talk about
that? So on the training, to simulate altered states of consciousness, they did a day of breath work.
So they weren't handing out ecstasy pills?
No, unfortunately. Much to my disappointment, I was hoping for a little bit of magic mushrooms to kind of see how that was in a group environment. No, they did not do that. I was very disappointed. So they did a day of breath work where they used the breath work as being that modality, the same way that MDMA or psilocybin would have been used. So they brought in these breathwork facilitators, and with breathwork, if you go somewhere and do a breathwork compared to, say, doing something on your headphones at home, they'll open up like a space. They'll open up kind of like a ceremony, and again, people are sort of setting intentions at that point. Even though it's breathwork, they're still setting intentions, and then they again have a playlist that's very curated, to try and take people on an experience and a journey. And in this one, we didn't have headphones or eye masks, which I thought was going to be really difficult for me to kind of get into it, but that was fine. So I was facilitating at first my person breathing, and I had another co-therapist sort of doing that. But this was the first time I've ever been in a breathwork room where I get to see what happens. Yep. So normally I'm a participant, I've got my headphones and my eye mask on, so I can hear people, kind of through the headphones sometimes, but I don't see what happens. So within 5 minutes, I'm seeing people sitting up, I'm seeing people sobbing and crying and shaking. One lady was literally screaming, "F off! Get off me!" She was howling and screaming, and I was like, oh my God, she's processing some trauma. Yep. But the fact that the breath did this. So the type of breath work this is, it's called conscious connected breathing, which basically means there's no pause between your inhale and your exhale. So what that does is, through that exchange of gases that as you're breathing, it takes you into an altered state. And what they say is, we actually release, I can never get this word right, endogenous, naturally occurring, let's say that, naturally occurring DMT. Now that itself is what's used in ayahuasca. There's a vine that has DMT in it, and there's ayahuasca, they get mixed together when we're talking about plant medicine, but we have that naturally occurring within us, and that can be released when we get to a certain state, with our breath. And that's why people can have these altered states of consciousness. They can have different visions, they can have different things come to them. So here I was watching everybody, and I was also noticing that I was feeling lots of this energy, and initially I thought that I was a little bit not nervous or apprehensive for my turn, but I was just feeling like maybe my body was ready to release things. And then what I noticed was, as people started peaking in their emotions, like they were all getting really upset and they were kind of releasing it that way, but as it would kind of come to the end of that emotion and they were kind of almost like sleepy now, like they'd released it all and they were kind of calm and just breathing in a more calm way, I realized that all that energy I'd felt inside of me had actually dissipated. Wow. It was actually really calm. So I realized that I was really holding a lot of that energy and how impacted we are by people's energy. So there was 45 of us in the room, but only 15 people are breathing at that time. And so even the love in the room of seeing everyone care for their person that's breathing and supporting them in that way, it was absolutely beautiful, magical. I'd say magical.
Wow.
And I literally walked away so we did 3 rounds of this and I was breathing through one of them. But what I realized was everyone felt really connected at the end of that day, because you saw people in their most vulnerable states. You saw someone, screaming and crying and shaking and having these really intense emotions and being so vulnerable. And you saw how people cared for them, and it was just so heart-led. And It was beautiful. So I literally said to everybody, I think I've paid $10,000 to realise I want to be a breathwork facilitator. It was so powerful. And the other bit about it was, I can do this now.
Well, you are doing it.
I am going to do it now. So yes, next week I head off to go and learn breathwork. So I literally was so blown away by that.
Where are you headed off to?
Oh, I chose better this time. So I made sure I chose a training where the in-person part's in Bali. Mind you, in saying that, everyone's like, oh, are you excited to go to Bali? But my trainer has just turned around and said that it'll be starting at 6 a.m. and we'll probably be finishing about 10 p.m. She was not joking. I was waiting for the just joking. Nope, she didn't. It didn't come.
And it's a vegan diet and all?
8 days of vegan food.
Yeah,
I might pop some music bars in my bag.
But yeah,
no coffee,
you came home 100%. I mean, you'd done a lot of breathwork before that, but
you'd already called me a breath pusher by that point. And
yes.
Oh, in fact,
but this was next level.
Well, I told people on the training, I said, oh, my husband already calls me a breath pusher. One of the girls said, well, now you're going to be a dealer. I said, yeah, I like that. I'm going to be a breath dealer. Yeah, so I was just blown away that people really could access those altered states of consciousness from that. And again, I've heard about these things. I think it was something for me about seeing it and checking in with myself and feeling the energy that I felt. And so then I was like, okay, well, this is a really powerful modality that I would want to do with my clients anyway. And 2, from what I learned with my psychedelics is we actually need to support our clients with being able to release things physically anyway. Like we need to have some of those skills that people are having their inner experience. But if they're having a moment of difficulty and they're feeling tension in their body, that you can support them to release that. And the breath is a really lovely way to do that. Movement is also another way to do that. Any sort of yoga poses or movements, or you could twist a towel to try and, release tension and things. But the breath can be something that we can absolutely use to regulate ourselves.
So the plan is when you come back fully qualified.
When I'm fully qualified.
Or when you're fully qualified.
Yeah.
We'll put some events on.
Oh yeah, that's my dream. That's my absolute dream. In fact, I'd already mentioned to my gym, I was joking, I'd sent them a breathwork to try and increase people's lung capacity. And I said something about, me, I love breathwork, blah, blah, blah. I'm even going to go and learn it, in Bali in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then straight away the owner of the gym was like, oh, we need to put another one on, because they've done one at the gym that we attended.
Yeah, we went.
And then they were saying, Tracey, you could lead it. And I'm like, hold on, let me just get trained first before you want me to do these big events. But that was quite lovely to know that there was interest there.
The funny connection to that story is in the breathwork at that gym, which would have been
that's true,
a couple of years ago. During that session, I had the insight that I should
be the co-host.
Not the co-host, but the co-facilitator for the retreats.
Yeah. Because prior to that,
because you'd been talking about it for a long time and you'd never done it.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me that you needed me to help you get it started. You seem like you're disagreeing.
Well, I didn't need you to help me get started, but I liked the idea of...
Well, you've been talking about it for quite a long time.
It hadn't... this is why I always say dream it. Yeah. Like, I think sometimes you've got to dream it and dream it and dream it. I just wasn't in the right spot to jump on it. But
you needed a doer, and I'm a doer.
You are a doer. And I also hadn't, because I'd always thought that as much as I do the relationship retreats with Tina and we do them every time together, I kind of liked the idea of I could have a different facilitator with different skills and, techniques that they could offer the participants, and that could kind of be different every time. Yeah. But as soon as you said that you wanted to do it, I actually felt like that was a really nice fit, and I didn't question it. I was just like, yeah, that felt nice, and we kind of ran with it.
We got it started pretty soon afterwards.
Yeah, we ran with it. So, so I would be able to support people both on our retreats. We could do one-off events. I can do work with clients, one-on-one, or I could do, groups and things, or small groups. There's so many more opportunities that I can.
And we should mention, I know you pretty much have talked about it, but because we've done these events at the beach, right? So we've done a couple of meetups at the beach for people who live in Perth. We are going to do another one when Tracey gets back from Bali. And I think people who don't understand what breathwork is
it's hard.
Come along and think that it's like a meditation.
Nope.
And one of the mistakes I think I made in the very first one was not explaining that to people who had never done breathwork before. and just sort of watching him just casually breathing in and out. And breathwork is hard work.
Yeah.
Hard work. But if you can do it and you get yourself to that altered state, you can release a lot of emotion. You can tap into a lot of emotion. Do you want to talk about
get those insights?
Some of the stuff I've been hearing while I've been working in the office and you've been doing your course, your online course?
What have you been hearing?
When you're doing the breathwork sessions.
Oh, right.
Screaming, crying.
Oh, from me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I thought people knew that. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you dig deep. It goes right in.
Know that. No.
But also, just to say, with breathwork, what I'm talking about is breathwork journeys. The things that I send to my clients sometimes are more around emotional regulation.
Shorter ones.
Because you can do down-regulated breathing where it's very relaxing and very peaceful, and it isn't so challenging. It's the ones where you're bringing in a lot of oxygen, or you're having to do things in a way that's quite fast, that can be really challenging and difficult. Yeah, so it brings up lots of emotion. It's releasing energy that's kind of been stored in your body and not been released, because if you think about how we move through life, often we'll go through something, and if I use my breath literally to demonstrate, we kind of go through it goes down, and then we go through something else, it goes down. So it's really that we're swallowing it down, because at that moment we just need to get through it, we'll keep going, and then we're not going back and releasing that energy that was stored during that time that we weren't processing it properly.
Yeah.
So it can really be quite profound for people. Do you know the funny thing? I've never had this myself, but one of our close friends, in his breathwork journey, that you guys did a class, funnily enough, with the same trainer that I'm going to go and learn my facilitation. He had his dad come to him in that breathwork journey, and he said he thought you were holding his hand.
His dad has passed away.
His dad has passed away. Yeah, that's key. That's key. And then, so he had told both of us that, and that was the first time I'd ever heard about that kind of thing. And then I had a client come in last year, and he said he'd gone and done a breathwork one-on-one with a facilitator, and he said the same thing, that his dad, who's also deceased, had come through. He had lots of profound insights, but that was one of the things that came through. So that was the second time I'd heard that was the case. And then one of Tommy's friend's mums, she had put a picture of a breathwork room on Facebook or something, and I just messaged her and said, did you do breathwork? And she said she did, and she really enjoyed it. And then I said, I had a client that had his dad come through, in one of his sessions, and she said that happened to her as well.
Wow.
So I don't know where the mums are at, but the dads have come through, but three of them have all said that, and all of them are not connected to each other. So it's not kind of like, oh yeah, me too. They were all three separate experiences.
Amazing.
So I can't explain that. That's just, again, that's stepping into altered states of consciousness, or we can't really explain how that's working and why that's working.
Yeah.
But again, that's why I was so blown away that there I was thinking, damn it, not getting psilocybin or MDMA to try this on. But yeah, the breath work was really quite profound. So much so that this is why I'm learning it.
So we won't do the big breathwork journeys at the beach, but we will do...
I'll do them in a curated space where you can
we'll do bigger events for those journeys run by you. So that's something for our audience to look forward to.
I know, I can't wait to be in that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exciting. Okay, well, I knew we were going to go from psychedelic to breathwork. Is there anything that we need to cover off on the psychedelics, or you feel like you got everything?
Well, just for people to know, because I think maybe some people would be excited to know that Australia is leading the world on this. It still is in the very, very early stages, so there's probably not a lot of these therapies happening currently. And at the moment, it's also very, very expensive. Like, I actually don't know what it costs because I've not been able to access any of that, because I've only just literally been given my certificate end of January.
Recently,
yeah, very recently. I was so excited last year when I finished my course, and we had to do a 4,000 word assignment. We had to do a 20-minute video, which you obviously know a lot about psychedelics from that.
How many times did we record the 20-minute video?
So let me just say, part of me passing, we had to do a 20-minute kind of like an introductory session if someone was interested in psychedelics, and I had to hit these key points of information and things. But it had to be 20 minutes. If you were over, you got penalised. And obviously if you're under, you're probably not going to put all the information in there. So I was really diligent with, okay, I want to make sure everything's, kind of covered off. So I think the first one we did like 5 minutes in and I said, okay, I've stuffed that up. I want to do that again.
Yeah.
And then the next one maybe got to
20, easy, 22.
No, it was over. It was over.
Yeah.
And so
we did
you
the
were
whole
saying,
thing, and I had to play the role of the depressed client.
yes.
Which I think I did a pretty good
You
job
did a
of.
good job. But the tricky thing for me was...
The role I was born to play.
So you kept saying, I can edit that. I'm like, no, I just want it to go through. Because I also didn't know if I was going to get penalised if they see the edits in there. And
Yeah, never would have
I
done it
know
anyway,
you're going to
yeah.
use 2 cameras, and you did use 2 cameras and
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. But I was just determined that I was like, no, I want to do this one run through. So yes, we did a second one that was over the amount of time.
Yeah.
And then we did a third one. The problem was, maybe it was 4.
Would have been 4.
But I kept
we did
forgetting.
Tons. I was annoyed by this.
But I kept forgetting what I'd said in
because
one
you've
of them.
done it too many times.
I know. I was like, have I mentioned that yet? Or was that in the last take?
I had to cover for you on one of them. It's like, yes, I've seen that. Thank you.
But anyway, but I passed.
Yeah, you did a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was full on. And in all seriousness, it was a lot. It was a lot. So you deserve your qualification.
Thank you.
It was huge.
Yeah. So anyway, I only just got that in end of January, and I sort of was waiting for that to happen for me to be like, okay, what's next? Like, do I get access to the people that have already trained and knowing who they are? Which, yes, I do. So now I can start contacting people and seeing if they need any, support with people. But it still would be very expensive, because I imagine that you're paying psychiatrist time, and although the psychiatrist is not involved in the actual, they could be, but no one would want to pay that money. In terms of the actual therapy, they'd be the person involved in the screening and the prescribing. But you need 2 therapists with you for all of those preparation sessions. So that's like, imagine that, double the amount that you'd pay a normal therapist. You're paying for 2 people now. Then you're paying for the actual medicine. Then you're paying for your dosing day, which is 6 to 8 hours worth of that 2 therapists' time.
Yeah.
Plus you need to be in a facility where there's a medic kind of around. So at the moment it might be more of your private hospitals and things providing that.
Yeah.
My absolute dream is that eventually it's going to move more towards the retreat space, where you can do it in nature rather than an office. And as much as they try and make the offices, more like a lounge room and very comfortable and very, elements of nature brought in with plants and things, I think nothing would really substitute being in nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully we can move towards that. So sort of the same way that, here in Australia, when cannabis was first legalised, it was very difficult to get people prescribed, and now it's much more common and easily available. I'm hoping that for psychedelics, that will also move in that direction.
Yeah. Well, you did a good job of making that sound totally unachievable.
Well, funnily enough, I've had 2 people in the last 2 days send me articles about how they're going to be legalising or funding, psychedelic-assisted therapy for veterans.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Surely the government would be funding something,
Well,
especially
you think of what they would
vets.
be paying already for people's mental health support and things.
Yeah,
And again,
yeah.
the clinical trials are showing that people can have a course of treatment and then, kind of be good for a couple of years at least, depending on the person. So, it might be expensive at the front end, but you're not having those ongoing costs that really, add up over the years. So I think once they see sort of some of those shifts, then we'll get more changes that are sort of going to happen from there. But people can nowadays, go and do psilocybin retreats, over in the Netherlands. I think there's Peru, South America, places like that for plant medicines.
Yeah.
We've even looked into it, ourselves. I don't actually feel as drawn to that anymore as I did previously. Maybe because we've done a couple of our own journeys and gotten a lot out of that.
I think it's your move into breathwork.
Yeah, because I think that now that I know that I can get that altered state of consciousness just through our own breath, and obviously that's a lot safer when people are worried about, what your journeys look like, then you're not going to... Oh, don't get me wrong, you can still have the shaking and the trembling, and they call it, I think it's tetany, when your hands go like... what is that, dinosaur? Yeah, like a claw, like T-Rex. They can lock in. And again, if people aren't knowing that that's normal, they could freak out about that.
Yes.
So, that's why you want to have someone that's really going to support you through any of these journeys, whether it's breathwork, whether it's psychedelics, anything like that. Why don't you share what happened to you in one of your psychedelic journeys with your shaking?
How do I word this? I went in with the intention that it was not going to be pleasant, because I wanted to deal with some heavy stuff, and I was not scared of it being what people might consider a bad trip.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was just like, nah, I want to deal with this stuff, and if it's hard, it's going to be hard.
Mm-hmm.
And we had little Lenny, our dog, in the front room. So I did this properly. Like I did it with a blindfold on, headphones on.
And we were
I kept saying
separate.
blindfold, eye mask.
And we were separate.
And we were separated. You were not in the same room as me. I just had Lenny. And yeah, it was full on. I was physically thrashing around. My legs were spasming quite a lot, uncontrollably. And it's kind of felt like I was getting a lot of that negative energy out of my body. It was to me, it was a much more physical journey than a mental journey.
Yeah.
But the other thing I took out of that is the role that the music played.
Yeah, so powerful.
Because that's the first time I've done it with an eye mask and headphones. And
a curated playlist.
Yeah, that music was, that was mind-blowing, actually. Like, and I should say, not to scare people, so even though like I was thrashing around and whatever, I always felt fully in control. I never ever felt scared, and so even though I would consider that full on, and if someone was watching me from the other side of the room, that would have been quite freaky. But mentally, I just always felt totally I felt like if I needed to, I could take the eye mask off, and everything would calm down.
Yeah,
but I chose not to.
Well, your mentality going into that was kind of what we said before, that in and through.
Yeah.
Even though it was difficult, even though your legs were shaking and trembling and doing all those releases, you were just kind of like, yeah, bring it on, let me get out of it.
I was
get through this.
Embracing that part of it, I guess, even though, it wasn't pleasant, but it was totally fine.
Yeah. And it also shows that we can be on the same medicine, the same dose, but we can have completely different experiences.
Yes.
Because on that same journey, and I was separate from you, so I wasn't, seeing all of that. Because again, that would have pulled me out of my journey if maybe I'm thinking you're distressed, or vice versa. And so I think that having that individual experience was really important.
Yeah. And that's the first time we've ever done it like that.
Yeah. And so you had lots of visuals in yours, whereas mine was no visuals, was more physical. I did feel really connected, to everything. I
fell in love with the lemon tree.
I did love the lemon tree. Yeah. So again, connecting to nature, and it was feeling connected to nature and the abundance, because the lemon tree provides us lemons and shade, and it's right near our gazebo, so it's also really pretty in that spot. So I had a lot of connection with that lemon tree, which sounds crazy, so on the outside, but again, you just feel so loving and so connected in those moments. I had some insights, around family members and around maybe some of their experiences historically that I hadn't looked at from that particular lens before. So you're really seeing things from different angles, getting different insights. And again, it's to do with that brain connectivity, all being lit up, that all of a sudden you're having those insights and those perspectives that aren't available to you, kind of just in your everyday life.
And that's where I think a lot of the prep comes in, is like, have some questions that you want to find answers to. That's what I was doing.
Yeah. So that was a really profound journey. And one of the things actually from my course that I realised is when people are really wanting the visuals or wanting the certain experience, and they're trying to control it a little bit, sometimes it might be that they're actually just not tuned into their body. We walk around nowadays kind of just in our heads. We're not really connected to our bodies, which is, again, why breathwork's so important. And sometimes our role as the therapist is actually just bring people back into their body. So in my training, they were talking about people being on certain doses of whatever medications and wanting them to be higher, but it's because they are just not connected to what they're feeling and what they're experiencing. And as soon as the therapist directs them back to their body and going, what are you noticing and what is the sensations you're having, they were feeling things, but they were almost waiting for it to be that whack in the face kind of sensation.
Yeah.
It was more subtle and they weren't tuning in enough, which is also a bit of a life lesson, that if we're not tuning in enough, we're going to miss those cues and those insights. It was a very profound experience, and I realised that, you need to really just tune into your body and what you're feeling, and that's why you want to quieten the outside noise. But we should be doing that in life in general.
Yeah. All right, good job. I think that was quite a productive episode, and hopefully people learned something. Now, for listeners who are annoyed that I forgot that actor's name, the guy from Limitless who's also in The Hangover, it is, of course, Bradley
Cooper.
Good, because I couldn't remember Cooper. I was hoping,
Yeah, Bradley Cooper.
I was hoping I'd just say Bradley and you'd say his last name, which you did. That makes me feel so much better. Okay. Great job.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. So, a couple of things to finish. I guess we do definitely want to say thank you to all the people who usually say to you.
Yeah, I get lots of feedback, so thank you. And then I have to give it to Scott because he's like, I don't get any feedback. And I'm like, no, people are saying nice things. So.
Yes, so thank you to everyone who's telling Tracey that they're enjoying the show. It means a lot to both of us.
Or that they've shared it with other people. That's really lovely to hear as well.
That's a huge one. If you want to help us out and you can't be bothered writing a comment or review on Spotify or Apple, which would be great if you did, but I understand why you don't, just tell a friend. Mm-hmm. If you like the show, tell somebody and get them to listen to it. That would be really, really good.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, I just want to be really clear. Even though, I said I have a love for psychedelics and and see this as being a very powerful modality, I just want to be clear that it is not suitable for everybody. And I wouldn't encourage people to go and do this on their own. Even though I'm saying it's very safe medicine, I think there is something, really lovely about that being a supported experience for you, however that looks, and not to do that on your own. I think, those things are really important. Yeah,
good point. I was lucky enough to live with a psychedelic-assisted therapist. You can also support us if you want by joining the mailing list, so you can get our fortnightly newsletter that's available at traceyquayle.com. And we're starting to put a little bit more effort into the old social media.
Oh, yes. You certainly are pushing me with that.
Yes. So you can follow Tracey on all the normal platforms. It's at traceyquayle.therapy. That's right, isn't it?
I've no clue.
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah. At traceyquayle.therapy on social media. Or LinkedIn, if you want to just search Tracey's name, you can do that too. And, again, if you're interested in the retreats, this is retreat season. So May, that's not too far away.
Yeah, register now.
Yeah, jump online, traceyquayle.com and register your interest. And that is it for today. Great job, well done.
Thanks, you too.
All right, see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.